Okay, so you want to own a diamond mine. Find a patch of earth in Africa, dig a hole deep enough to swallow a city, and haul up the hardest, most precious stones on the planet. But here's the strange part. The stones aren't precious. They aren't even rare. You bought a pit full of pretty pebbles, and the only reason the whole world believes they're worth a fortune is that somebody 70 years ago wrote 4 words on a scrap of paper, and the man who paid 2 months' salary to believe it was you. Before we dive in, hit subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. That's the whole game. Everything else is just the story of how a common stone got sold to you as forever, and how the only real thing in the entire deal was the look on her face when you opened the box. Because you remember that moment, don't you? You'd saved for months. You carried that little box around for days, terrified you'd lose it, terrified you'd say it wrong, and then you said it anyway, clumsy, heart going like a drum. And she said yes, and her hand was shaking as much as yours when you slid it on. That part was real. The fear was real. The hope was real. The love was real. Hold on to that, because everything else about that little stone was built by men who never felt a single bit of it. And maybe you weren't the one holding the box at all. Maybe you were the one who opened your hand and said yes. Maybe the ring is on your finger right now, or maybe it's in a drawer because the person who gave it to you is gone and it's the last warm thing they ever pressed into your palm. However it reached you, the feeling around it was real. That is exactly what makes the rest of this so hard to hear. Here's the truth they spent a century and a fortune keeping from you. A diamond is not rare. A historian who studied them his whole life called them as common as pebbles. There is no shortage of them. There never was. The great mines of Africa could bury the world in diamonds by next year if anyone allowed it. So how does a common stone end up costing more than a car? Not because it's scarce, because one company made it scarce on purpose. That company is De Beers, and for most of the last 100 years, it ran the most successful machine for controlling a price that the world has ever seen. It began in 1888 with a colonial businessman named Cecil Rhodes, and by the time he passed in 1902, he already controlled 90% of every diamond on Earth. Then a family called the Oppenheimers took the wheel and gripped it for 80 years, and their trick was almost beautiful in its cruelty. Whenever too many stones came out of the ground and threatened to make diamonds cheap, De Beers simply bought them all and locked them away in a vault and kept them there, out of the world, so that the few they did let out would always feel rare. They never sold you a precious stone. They sold you the empty space where all the other stones were hidden, and they controlled it so completely that even the buyers had no say. You did not haggle with De Beers. You were invited, a handful of times a year, handed a sealed parcel of stones at a price you were not allowed to argue, and you took it, or you were simply never invited again. One company decided how many diamonds the whole world would ever see, and exactly what each one would cost. But a locked vault only sets a price. It doesn't make you ache for the thing. For that, they needed you to feel something. So they hired an advertising agency, and one of their own private memos called the plan exactly what it was: propaganda. The assignment, in their own words, was to make a man hand over 2 months of his pay for something he never knew he was supposed to want. And in 1947, a tired young copywriter named Frances Gerety, working late one night, scribbled down 4 words that would reach into the life of nearly everyone who would ever fall in love. A diamond is forever. Before that line, almost no one proposed with a diamond, fewer than 1 in 10. After it, almost everyone did. They didn't just sell a stone, they wrote the script for the most important night of your life, and you performed it word for word, and you never once knew it had been handed to you. And they were everywhere at once. They slipped diamonds onto the hands of movie stars and planted love stories in the magazines so that the longing felt like it rose up from the whole world, instead of from a single company in a single boardroom. Then they raised the price of love itself. 1 month's salary became 2, and 2 became 3, simply because they decided that it should. And to prove the feeling would take root in anyone, they walked into Japan, where almost no bride had ever worn a diamond, and within a single generation, nearly 9 in 10 did. The feeling wasn't ancient, it wasn't handed down, it wasn't even yours, it was made and it was aimed. And the cruelest part is folded inside that beautiful word, forever. Because forever didn't only mean your love, it also meant never sell it, keep it always, pass it down. And do you know why they needed you to keep it forever? Because the moment you ever tried to sell it back, you would discover the one secret that could have ended the whole thing in a week. That the stone you paid a fortune for is worth almost nothing the instant it leaves the store. They taught you to treasure it forever, so that you would never, ever find out what it wasn't. Ask anyone who has ever carried a ring back into a shop, hoping to turn it into rent, or groceries, or a quiet way out of trouble, and watch the man behind the counter offer them a small fraction of what they once paid, and understood, far too late, that the forever they'd been sold was a door that only opened one way. And the woman who wrote those words, who taught the whole world that love must sparkle and must cost a fortune, never married, not once. She sold forever to everybody, and she went home alone. Now follow that stone all the way back down, past the shop window, past the cutter, past the vault, all the way to the bottom, to the hands that actually pulled it out of the earth. A man standing waist-deep in muddy water in a country sitting on billions of dollars of diamonds, where most people live on about $1 a day. He doesn't even own the shovel he digs with. He borrowed it, and he's in debt for it. And he'll hand over nearly everything he finds just to keep from sinking deeper into that debt. He lifts a stone from the mud, worth more than he will earn in 10 lifetimes, and he passes it up the chain, and it makes every single person above him richer, and it leaves him with nothing. The whole glittering machine is built so that the one man who actually touches the diamond is the only one who never gets to keep a cent of it. Think about the two ends of that chain. A man waist-deep in mud who can't afford the shovel, and a young man across the world handing over 2 months of his life's work for a ring, both of them giving up something they couldn't spare, so that the people in the middle, who never lift a tool and never feel a thing, could grow rich on a stone that costs almost nothing to keep locked in a drawer. And here is where the story turns, right now, in our own time. Because the spell is finally breaking, a factory can now grow a diamond, a real one, the exact same stone, identical down to the atom, that not one jeweler on earth can tell apart from the kind dug out of the ground, for 1/10 of the price. Younger couples worked it out almost overnight, and nearly half of them now choose the grown one and smile at the difference. And the great empire that ruled the world's most romantic lie for 100 years is coming apart at the seams. It is sitting on a mountain of stones nobody wants, billions of dollars written off, the whole thing quietly hung with a for sale sign. The one stone they swore would last forever turned out to be the only thing in the story that didn't. So what did you actually buy the night you opened that box? You bought a common stone, made scarce in a vault, made priceless by an advertisement, sold to you by people who never felt a thing. They lied about the rarity. They lied about the price. They lied about forever. But there was one thing their machine could never reach, never price, never touch. Because the real forever was never the stone. It was her hand shaking in yours. It was the yes. It was every ordinary year that came after. The small kitchen, the hard mornings, the holding on when it would have been easier to let go. It was the way she still reaches for your hand without thinking, after all this time, having never once needed to know what the stone was worth. Look at an old woman's ring sometime. worn thin on a hand that raised a family. The thing that makes the children fight over it when she's gone has nothing to do with what the stone would fetch. It's whose hand it lived on. The diamond was never the precious thing in that box. You were. You always were.